All right. So welcome to the Roblox workshop. Okay. My name is Pavel. I'm actually the vice president of this club, and this is my first workshop. Okay. Yeah, that's exciting. All right. So yeah. All right. So first thing first is we're gonna have to download Roblox. Okay. If you haven't made an account yet, you should do that. It's pretty simple. I think you just search up Roblox. So I think if everyone has that, then we're good, right? Does everyone actually have the engine installed already? Liz? Did you install the engine?
I do.
All right. So we might as well just begin, right? All right. So once you open Roblox Studio, you should see this screen, okay? And this is the screen where you can create a base plate or like any template project. So I'm just going to pick a base plate, okay? And you're going to see this, okay? And with this, there's mainly three main areas for this engine that you should be looking at. And that includes the top part right here, which is called, I have a screen for it, which is called the toolbar. And this is basically where you can actually interact and change the properties of like objects in your scene. So this is your scene, and this is basically what your game is going to be, okay? And so with this toolbar, you have home, which is like you can, well, I mean, you have like 5 main areas or 6. And we're going to be mainly focusing on test and home, okay? So what we're doing today is we're making a battleground game, okay? What are we doing? We're making a battleground game, okay? Yeah, so with a battleground game comes different spawn places or positions, right? Then there comes like probably like weapons and probably like a leaderboard, okay? So that's what we're mainly doing today. And so to start off, we're gonna actually focus on the spawning, okay? So currently, if you loaded up base plates, you'll see that there is one spawn location. But if you actually, if you look up in the toolbar and you go to models and you go to the right, you can choose to add another spawn location, okay? And this is pretty easy, right? So you just press the button and it just spawns in. And then you could just place it anywhere you want to. So I'm just gonna make like a couple, or maybe like 3, okay? Now, if you've noticed that when you put an object in the game scene, you could see that once you put an object in the game scene, to your right, it shows up in the Explorer tab, okay? And what the Explorer tab basically is everything that your game stores, okay? Physically and over like the web, and like data in general. Now, one important thing you have to know is that every Roblox game is a multiplayer game, okay? So there are different places where you store things for the clients and the server. So I'll talk about the hierarchy later. Hello. I'll talk about the hierarchy later and the networking framework that comes with Roblox. But basically, all you have to know is that the Explorer stores all of that, literally everything. So you're going to be looking at this side of the screen for a lot of your development process. All right? Now, I could showcase another part of the Explorer tab. Well, it's not part of the Explorer tab, but it's actually at the bottom half, which is the properties section right here. So when you press in an object, you see that it opens up a properties tab. And this is every single variable that you can change about this object, right? And it's kind of, it's organized in like different tabs and like lists. And so what we can do is, just to showcase, I'll change the color of these spawn locations, okay? So you can literally just do whatever you want with this. You can change it however you want. Okay? Now, this is the cool part, okay? When I was talking about the networking framework, I could actually showcase it right here, okay? Now, you might not understand it initially. Oh, did you?
I did download the program. What do I go to for that?
Yeah, wait, do you have a Roblox account?
I do not, but I can make one.
Okay, so first make a Roblox account and then download Studio,
Okay.
which is, it's called Roblox Studio. It should be a quick install. All right.
Got it.
Look at what you call it. Then you have
All right. So
Got it.
one thing I want to show is how the multiplayer works in this game. Okay. Now you've noticed that I've loaded in my character. Don't mind my dude, but whatever. It's irrelevant to this workshop. Okay. But okay. So actually, since we put all these 3 spawn points, the game automatically just randomly chooses a spawn location for you, okay? Now, since we've loaded in the game, oh yeah, I didn't show you how to load in the game, but you press this play button right here. Or you can press the test tab, and you can like customize how you want to test your game. So like you can even choose how many clients, which is one of the main features, is how many players you want to simulate in your test, okay?
This is under which tab?
This is the test tab at the top of the toolbar. But I'm gonna just press the play button, and I've spawned in a random location, okay? But here is one thing that is kind of important to understand in Roblox game development, that we are a client, okay? And there is a client and one singular server that it exists in a Roblox session, okay? So that means every person who joins your game is a client. That means also that there are multiple clients connected to a server. So there is one server communicating back and forth with each individual client, okay? So one thing that you also have to understand is that information that is updated on the client can be chosen not to be updated or called to the server, or the server chooses, okay, so basically changes made on the client don't necessarily get replicated to the server, which gets updated to every client, if you understand that. So anything that is changed on the server is changed on every single client in Roblox Studio, okay? So I'll show you this right now. If I actually go and pause my game, I've pressed it in the toolbar. Oh shit, never mind. If I actually go in my Explorer tab, right? And if I press Workspace, which is actually every physical object that exists in your game, and if I go to like a spawn location, and if I change the color one more time to like, let's say red, what you'll notice that if I go up in this toolbar, I could switch to the server side, okay? So if I press the server, you can notice that the color did not change on the server. That means if you are another client that is connected to this game, just because I changed the color to red on my screen does not mean I updated it to everyone else, okay? And that's pretty important because that makes sure that, you know, people can't just choose to update like certain features or variables in your game, okay? Now, since this is a battleground, we should probably have more than just 3 spawn locations, okay? So one thing I think one important thing that you need to do is probably add a weapon in your game. So an easy way to add in a weapon without even coding in Roblox is if you go to the toolbar in View, okay, and you press Toolbox. These are assets created by Roblox and by players, okay, by random developers. Now you can, this toolbox, this is connected to the Roblox's like server thing. So you can literally search up anything you want, any model, any object, or even any plugin or script. Hello. It is in the View tab, and you press Toolbox. Okay? Now, what we want to do is search up sword, okay? I think this is what I've chosen. And also, it is created by Roblox. You can also see who it's made by if you hover over it. And I'm just going to just press on it, okay? And it'll pop up this little message for me, but I'm just going to say yes. Now, if you've noticed, it doesn't appear in our game. But if you press this specific folder called Starter Player, well, actually, Starter Player is a folder that is instantiated, or is like, it is cloned onto the player, right? So everything that you store here, wait, where did my sword go? Oh, it's in Starter Pack. Okay, wait. Guys, I'm terrible, but Give me some slack, okay? All right, so we have starter pack. Starter pack is actually, if you've ever played Roblox, it's your inventory, okay? So it automatically just adds to your inventory. And if I play the game, it's literally right here. And it already has all its functionality and everything. So I could just swing my sword and do whatever I want, okay? I'm walking. So if you could see, if you're looking at starter pack, you can also drop down on the sword and you can see that it also has its own little like, what are called children. So these are like children objects for like a script and everything, okay? So it has its own script for its like functionality, right? And we basically already have a game. So if we want to test like with multiple players in our game, we can actually choose that in the test, once again, in the test tab, and you can choose 2 players, and you can run it by clicking this button. And what you get is a loaded up server client, or a server window, and 2 versions of Roblox. So that means if I turn around right now, I will see another instance of my player. Okay, and I can control them individually. Now, if I use my sword, I kill them. And that's crazy, right? No, it's not. I gotta nerf the sword, but I didn't make the sword. So. Alright. Now, if you want to kill your test, is the way you do that is you go to the server window and you press cleanup. It's right in your test tab, okay? And that deletes all the instances and all the clients.
My laptop is so not powerful for this, but it's working.
Hey, man.
Show again how do you add players?
How do you add players? It's right here. It's in this drop down. So you can choose as many as you want. I advise like 2. Okay. Now continuing. I talked about client server. Now, I think one important thing that we should showcase is probably like making something like an explosion. Because this is a way that I could demonstrate to you how you actually communicate with the server and clients with code, okay? So what we do here, well, actually, before we get into that, I will like tell you like all the services that we need before we start that. So if you go in your Explorer, you see that you have like these certain I don't know how to call them, like components that have like custom icons. And if you look at server script service, this is a component that runs scripts on the server side. Okay, so this is where your one server runs any script that you attach to it. So if we add a script right here, we have made a server script. Okay. So we're going to need a server script, and we're going to also need a script for our clients, okay? So if you go into, and the way you run a client script is if you look at starter player and you look at starter character scripts, you can press local script, okay? And a local script is only run by the singular clients, okay? So the server has no effect on it. Neither does any other clients. I added it. So if you press the plus icon right here, and if you can search up local script, that's what you're supposed to do.
For character script.
Yeah. Now we can rename this to an effect. Yeah?
What's the difference between starter character and starter player?
Okay. So when you load into a game, there's a difference between a player and a character. A character is a physical model that you control. And so everything attached to that is its own thing. It's like our sword, right? It's an object, but you get to control it, I guess. And a player is a way, it doesn't necessarily exist, but it is linked to the client so that it communicates to the server, okay? So imagine if you added a script to your character, right? Imagine if I told the server to delete that character. That deletes every single thing linked to it. So that means technically I don't want to be able to do that, right? I want to be able to store data that is not bound to a character, right? A character is a physical player, and a player is just a folder that stores client information. Okay. So with our effects, what we want to do is physically instantiate or like spawn in an explosion. So that's going to be physical. So we want to link that to our character, right? Not just the client itself. So what we've made is a server script and a client script, okay? And what we want to do is, well, now we're getting into coding, okay? So what we want to do is we want to tell the server when we die, okay? Like for our explosion, I just want to make it so that when you die, you explode, okay? So one way you could do that is you have to detect when you die on the client, okay? So if we're in our client right now, the way you do that is you actually have to reference the player, the character in the game on the client side. So right now, what you have to initially do is you have to write local player game.players, which is a class that is linked to a lot of like services and like other classes that you can access.
Is there a way that you can make the text not just?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
There you go. Then from our player, once again, I've said that the player is not necessarily our physical character, right? So we actually have to access our physical character. And let's just say local character equals player.character, okay? And that accesses it. Now, what a character also contains in Roblox, if we actually play the game, we can actually see this in action. So we have players, and this is our client, right? But if we go in our workspace, we have our character right here. And if you press the drop down, you can see that it has a humanoid component to it. And a humanoid component is everything that you can change about the player, right? So like walk speed, jump power, health, everything like that. And you could see it when you run the game, that everything loads in like this. So you can actually access it. Since we know that, well, in our script, we have access to character, but we haven't access to humanoid, because what the humanoid holds is our health. And what we want to use the health to check if we die. So what we want to do is we want to write local humanoid equals character wait for child. What wait for child does is we have to wait once our character is actually loaded in the game, okay? Because once again, like the client joins, but it also takes time for the full character to load in. So we actually have to wait for that. And then we write humanoid as a string. What's up?
Why did you use a colon there?
I use the colon because that is a function. That is a function. That's how you call a function linked to a class.
Oh.
Also, I didn't mention, but we're using Lua. It's very similar to Python syntax, right? But it's actually, it's not close to Python at all in terms of code. It's actually it's C code. It's C code reframed so that you can easily code it, like code it.
So say it's like C code.
It's like C code, but it looks like Python. That's what it is, bro. Character, what do you mean? No, character is not a function. Character is your physical character in the game.
It's who you control, right?
It's who I control.
While player are like stuff that can respond to the.
It's client information.
Right?
Yes.
Do we have to make a local script before making this script, or do we have to?
Yes. This is actually we're scripting this in the client script.
Right.
This is on the client.
Okay. And did we have to create anything before this because I missed anything?
All we did is we added an empty script called effects,
Oh, empty script.
but it's a server script, okay? And it's put in server script service.
Service script. Cool.
Okay.
Amazing. And that's just a script, not a local script.
Yeah. So that's run on the server itself.
Amazing. Yeah, I knew that we made something beforehand, but I missed what it was.
Okay. Now, what you want to write is we want to detect when the humanoid actually dies. So it's actually really easy. Humanoid that died.
Yay.
But the way we actually check, or how we connect to this thing that gets called, is we write connect. Now connect also gets linked to another function that is custom to whatever we want to do. So we are calling a function within a function. So we're connecting only when the humanoid dies, and then we are adding a function that is called when that happens. Okay.
What is that? Wait. What is that syntax? So you have.
Okay. So humanoid that died is.
No, I mean towards the function. You have in parentheses something called function.
Yes.
That also has another parentheses that has action in it.
It's the same thing as saying, as defining. Let me see this. I'm a cheater. I forgot how to make a function, bro. Oh, it's. How do I make a function?
You tell me.
Someone help me.
I don't know.
Guys. Oh, I'm so stupid. I'm actually so stupid. Okay, sorry. So it's the same thing as saying.
Okay, I kind of guess.
It's just more efficient because it's all in one line.
Yes. But we call this function when it connects to this thing that happened, okay? Which is we die.
You died.
Yes. And it gets called once, just so you know. So now, what we want to do is actually tell the server that we died. Because if we want to play our explosion to every person in that game, we have to spawn it in on the server side. Okay? I think Liz is the only one who understands me. Maybe.
Say it again, but slower.
Okay. So if once, like what I've shown you, if I change the color on the client, right? The color doesn't actually get changed to everyone else, right? But the server can do that, right? Because everything that's done on the server is replicated to every client that's connected.
But not the other way around.
Right. So if we want to explode, right? We have to check when we die, and then tell the server to spawn an explosion.
For the client or for the server?
The client checks if we die, right? And then it tells the server to spawn in an explosion.
So that everyone else can see the
Yes.
explosion. Okay.
Okay, so everybody does see the explosion.
Only if it's called on the server.
Only if it's called. Okay.
So to foster this communication, we actually have to set up what's called a remote event, okay? And a remote event is made by adding it in replicated storage. And replicated storage is memory that is accessed by both the client and the server, okay? So what we can write is remote event, and you can just add it right there, okay? Now the name matters because this is how you're gonna actually access it in the script. So let's just say explosion. Okay.
Bugging me.
Now, to send the message, we actually have to declare that explosion because we're not accessing it anywhere. So on the client script, the same script, we can write explosion equals game get service. Now, get service is accessing replicated storage. That's how we access that folder. And then dot, and it auto-completes for you, explosion. Now we want to send the message to the server. So we write explosion, since we've already declared it, we do fire server. Now any server that waits for a message from the client, so any server that gets a message from the client will probably get it from this, because this is exactly where we call it from. So now since we're firing the server, we have to add another side to this communication. So earlier we added a a server script to our server script service, right? So if we go in our server script now, right here, this is the code for it. But basically, what we want to do is declare our explosion event again, because we have to wait for that message to arrive to us.
This is in the server script?
Yeah. There we go. We access it again. And now if we do explosion, dot on server event, and we connect a function to this, let's declare a function here, or make a function here. I'll just name it like explode. We link it to here, and now what happens is that when the client fires it to the server, it also sends a variable which player did it, okay? So that's why I add a parameter in our function called player, because that is on default the first parameter for a remote event, okay?
What did you add to replicated storage?
I added a remote event.
Called explosion?
Yeah.
For some reason on my, oh, never mind, I just don't have spell.
Yeah.
No, wait, no, it's spelled, oh, capitalization.
Sup, Yaman? Do you guys get this, or?
Almost just catch it up.
Can you give us like a recap?
All right. So we have our client script and our server script, right? So all we do in our client script is that we tell it to fire it to the server, because we okay, first we access our explosion remote event, right?
Yeah.
And we tell it to fire to the server. Now the server is waiting for a call, but we haven't made that at all. So we add a server script to our server script service, right? And on this side, we again reference the explosion remote event because it's the same event, and we wait for a message. This is how we write it. This is how we write it, so that we can tell it to call a function when the client sends a message.
But nothing's happening in that local customer called explode.
Right. So we're gonna write that next. Okay.
You gotta have it memorized, my guy.
Okay, bro. I'm just nervous, man. All right. So now, how do you make an explosion in this game, or in Roblox in general? You want to make a clone or like a new instance of an explosion class. So in Roblox, it's already like pre-made for you, kind of. So all you have to do is write local explosion equals instance.new. So we're making a new instance of this explosion object, and it auto-completes for you, because that already exists and it's already made. But there is some behavior we have to declare for this object.
So using explosion in quotation marks, that's inbuilt.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Now for an explosion, it has specific variables to it. So like, if we say explosion dot blast radius, that would be the radius of our explosion. So we can set it to an integer value, which is, I don't know, 10. If you set it to anything more, then you'll go flying. But you go flying anyways, because it's an explosion. All right. Now, there's other variables. I mean, there's other things that you have to declare for this explosion, which would be where it explodes and what it's linked to, right? Because what we've made is we've made a variable that doesn't exist in our physical game. So we have to tell it to be parented to the workspace, which is everything that we can see. So what we can do is we can do local, or actually we could just do explosion dot parent equals game dot workspace. Okay, and that adds it to our game. We will see that. But now we have to also tell it where to explode. And I think we'll do it so that it explodes on the player exactly, right? Because that makes sense, sort of. So now we have to actually access the player on the server. Now that's tricky because the server has a file of players, but not characters, right? What we've been given is just a player, not the physical character that we can tell its position to. Because a player is the client information, but the client information doesn't have a position. It's just data. So what we have to do is get the character from the player. So we have to do local character equals player dot character, I think, right? Yeah. All right. Also, we also have to add an if statement to check if the character even exists. Because once I've told you before that if the character dies, it doesn't exist in the game, right? So, and the thing is, if you don't check for this scenario, then this script will it will die on you, because this is one script that is run on the server, and the server, every client relies on the server. So if you jam the server, it will jam it for everyone else.
So
You're like, everyone relies on this functionality. So an easy way is to check if the character exists is if character, or if not character, then return end. And that just tells us if the character doesn't exist, then we don't explode anything. We don't do anything. Yeah. So let's see. I mean, this is, you don't need this, but now we can actually, since the character exists in our thing, we can do explosion.position equals character.position. I think character has a position. If character doesn't have a position, then I give up. I have my own stuff, but I've made it like differently, right? And this is a lot of explaining to do, because each Roblox player like has its own like humanoid root part, which is like just a part.
Yeah.
And you would tend to do that, but it really doesn't matter, I think. But I think this should work. So let me test it actually. So if we press our test for 2 clients again, we can kill one of the dudes and see if we explode.
What happens? Is there a visual?
Yeah, there is a visual because it's pre-made.
It's a built-in explosion?
Yeah. There you go. He explodes.
Could we also add an object that'll just insta-kill players so that
Alright, let's see.
In the meantime, we can do something more simpler. I don't know why I started off with this, but we're gonna do the easier thing now by making the player run.
Okay,
Yo, Solaj, you gotta listen up, bro.
Lock in.
No talking in class. I hear you from across the room, man.
Okay, I saw an explosion, and now it's not there anymore.
Okay, if you saw it, it's good enough.
Bruh.
It's your laptop. Don't blame me. Actually, do you want me to show you the slides?
No, well, show it to me at the end.
All right. We're going to do the easier thing now of making the player run. So this is actually really easy, as I've said before. If you go into starter character scripts and you add another local script, we can now create the functionality for the player to run. Now, the way we could do that is check for input, right? So if we press shift, we should probably increase the speed at which the player moves. So the way you check for input is you get another service called user input service, right? So let's do that. And it's get service. User input service. Right here. Okay? Now, user input service has another event that is fired when the input begins and ends, and is also changed. But what we're going to need is when it begins and when it ends. So now we want to do this. We want to do another connect, right? Because we want to check, we want to connect a function to this. So we're going to actually do it this time like this. And we're going to embed a function within our connect function. And one other thing we have to do is add parameters, which are linked to this service, which is input and game processed events. Okay. Now, game processed event is a Boolean that tells you if the player is using the chat box, and you obviously don't want to check for input of the player if they're chatting. Okay. So if we are chatting, then we return end, which doesn't run any code in that function. So then we actually also have another parameter called input. And input is our actual input. So if we reference that input and we write input.keycode equals an enumerator, which is basically just a way to say, like, if it equals this type of value, right? Which is enum.keycode. Yeah, left shift. Then this is kind of the syntax for Lua's if statement. Then what we want to do is change the speed, or specifically the walk speed variable of the humanoid. Now, as you can see, we haven't actually accessed the humanoid, and we have no way to change the walk speed of the player. So what we're going to have to do is declare, firstly, our player, which is game.players.localPlayer, which is the client. Then we want to access the character, once again, which is player.character. And then we could do, we can access the humanoid, which is where we can change the walk speed. Done. Now in our if statement, we can write humanoid.walkspeed equals 25. The default walk speed in Roblox is 16, okay? Now, if we press shift, we will forever set our humanoid's walk speed to 25. So we have to check when we let go of shift. So what we could do is we can literally copy this function again and change input began to input ended. Because when the input ends, we want to switch it back to 16. All right? And that's all you have to do for the run script. If you set the walk speed 90, there you go, bro. Is everyone done? I'll showcase it, just to prove how good of a coder I am. No bugs at all. Look at this.
Don't believe that. Nice.
It works.
Look at that speed. Nah, fast.
Nah, it's not fast, bro.
All right.
Uh,
Yeah, I got you. All I did is just copy paste the first function, changed it to input ended, and then changed the walk speed back to normal. Does anyone have any issues? All right. Now we have our main functionality. We have the best game that we've ever made, right?
Yes.
But now we need a stat tracker, okay? We need to store the amount of kills the player gets. Because what's the point of a game if you can't see numbers going up? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make another server script, okay?
Whoa.
Yes. And we're gonna call it leaderboard. Because the leaderboard is managed by the server, not a singular client, right? That only makes sense. Okay? And let's see, how did I do it? All right.
Wait, you have two called okay.
All right, what we want to do is first get our players. Now, in a server script, you cannot access a specific player. You can only access a list of players. That makes sense because the server isn't linked to a client. It is linked to all of them. Okay? And, oh, it's not game dot. We'll get it as a service because this is more safer. This is safer coding.
Safe.
Yes. And now what we want to do is we want to add what is called a leader stat, which is it's basically like data that you add to a player when he joins the game. So what we want to do is check if a player is added to the game. Okay? So the way you do that is players.player added connect to a function, let's say set up leaderboard. Okay? And we're gonna make our own thing right here at the top called the same thing. So this function is called whenever a player is added to the game. Not specifically when the physical character is added. Because what the leaderboard is gonna look like, it's not gonna be linked to any sort of like physical characteristic. Okay? It's gonna be a UI element, sort of. So the way you make a leader stat, I'll actually just copy and paste this code and explain it. Okay? You instantiate a leader stat instance. Or actually, no, you instantiate a folder in the game called leader stats. And the game automatically knows that you're trying to add a leaderboard, like, class to the game. Okay? And then you set it specifically to the player. Because this leader stat is specific to the player. Okay? And then what we want to link to it is a value that we actually display in our game, which would probably be the amount of kills you get in the game. So you have to make a new instance of int value. So it's kind of like an integer class if you ever done like Java or something. But this is also a component in Roblox that you can manage in the Explorer. So if we load our game, we'll actually be able to see that as a component. And we also have to set its behavior, so like its name, its value, probably initialize it to 0 when the player joins, and you have to set its parent to leader stats, which is the folder. Okay? So this already automatically, if we load into the game, it displays it in the top right, like this tab of players, but also right next to it are kills. Okay? Now, you could also see it in your Explore tab if you press where do you press? Hold up, guys. Oh, it's actually linked to your player right here. So if you go into your player's like component, which displays every single player that connects, every client, and you press the drop down for your specific character, you'll see a leader stats folder and the specific integer value kills. So I think if we change this literally, it changes it up right here. So this is just a UI element, but this is what is actually happening in the back end. And you can just do whatever you want in runtime, but it doesn't affect it if you stop the game. Now, we've made a leaderboard, but we also need to increment the amount of kills we have based on the amount of players we kill. So we also want to check when we kill a player. Now, the way I did it isn't probably the best solution, but it works, okay? And it's a little bit complex for you to grasp because you'd have to understand probably like how the script that we're going to access in just a few seconds actually works. So the way I thought of it is the way to detect a kill from the player is to check when the sword of the hitbox accesses the character that it hits. And so that gives us two variables. That gives us the player that attacked and the player that died. So if we can check if the player dies, then we can increment the kills for the player that attacked. So if you go back to your sword object in starter pack and you press classic sword, you can go to the sword script. Now you'll notice that this sword script is a server script. So this is based on accessing players, which is exactly what we kind of want. Now there's a lot of functionality here, which you can probably ignore because it's just, playing animation. It's everything that has to do with using the sword. But one function that we are looking at specifically is blow, okay? This blow function is called when it makes contact with a player, or with a part specifically, right? Now there's a lot of conditions that it does here to check, for a hit to render. But at the bottom here, you can notice that if a hit is rendered, it calls some functions like take damage. And so this most likely, if you think about it, is called once because you take damage once in the game. So if we are calling this once, right, and this gives us information about the player that hit another player, then we can check, we can do everything we want to increment the leaderboard kill stat. So, the way I did it, I will copy paste this once again because I don't feel like typing it out. But I will explain everything. And I've also added comments. You guys see that? Or is this better? All right. I've also added a little thing called instance attributes because I'm going to explain how this works exactly. So the problem with the sword is that it actually has more than one hitbox. So that means every hitbox checks if it touches the player. So that, and I've like tested it. It has 4 hitboxes, okay? So that means it will call the blow function 4 times if it makes direct contact with every single hitbox, if the player makes contact with every single hitbox. So what you want to do is cancel out, you want to cancel out the 3 other hits so that it is only called once. And the way you do that, or the way I figured, is we add an attribute to the character. Now an attribute is sort of kind of like a variable that you attach to anything that you want, or any component that you want in Roblox. And it acts sort of as a Boolean. So you can set it as true or false. So we use this attribute to specifically add it to the character. Now, if we add it to the character, then we can check if it has died already. Because that's exactly how that works. So if you this condition is specifically called in the bottom of your blow function. So if everyone's accessed this script, then you can start writing this. So first of all, we want to check if the player's actually died, right? The enemy player. So we check if its health is below 0. And then we also check if that character's attribute is true or false. In this case, we want to check if it's not false. Because if it's not false, then we have to set it to true. And after this condition is valid, then we add that attribute, we set it to true, and then the bottom half of this code is what actually increments the value of your leader stat, which is your number of kills. So, yeah, that's how that works. And so that even if it runs 4 times, even if this blow function runs 4 times because it has 4 hitboxes, it will run only once because the first condition, the first hitbox that hits it will set its attribute to true, and every other attribute will be checked and it will not run this condition.
So does it set the other hitboxes to false?
Because we set its attribute to the character, it actually accesses it from the character. So it's not linked, its scope is outside of this script,
Right.
or to the out of the function. Sorry. Now you can actually see this, I'll probably show it. You'll be able to see this attribute in your components in your properties tab. And you can use this for almost anything that you want. So attributes are actually pretty important in Roblox development.
Could you go back to the leaderboard script? I missed it.
Yeah, I got you. Is everyone
Ready? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's basically it though.
That's it?
That's it. That's the workshop.
That's it?
So I've showed you how to communicate with the server and client, which is very important in Roblox development.
Yes. Bless it.
And there are more resources.
How do we monetize it?
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah, you
You
really say
monetize
that,
it. I did say that.
Yeah, where's-
and I
where's the money,
lied.
bro?
How do we get money?
You get money by searching up how to monetize your game.
Wow, that's all. That's what we came
Wait,
for.
but no, it's very easy. It's very easy. You do. I quit. Sliders, did you want to see my game, bro? I've made this. I've made the sword model and everything. Look at that. Wait, I'll show you another minimal viable product of mine. Look at that. Isn't that cool, guys?
Yes. Oh, he's got the fucking
This is a lot of work, man. Cause like, you got to think about like, the reason I like making games in Roblox. Not only is it because it's pretty easy to like make multiplayer games, you get to learn how to make like networking. You know, like how to work with networking, how to like. I feel like that communication is like really interesting to me, and
Like you said, it's always multiplayer.
it's always multiplayer. So you have to work with the framework. So also, it's also interesting because there's like a level of like cybersecurity that you learn. Because the thing is with Roblox hackers is they have access to every event that is here. I've mentioned like replicated storage, right? This is shared with the client and the server. So if the client has it, that means it's accessible by a hacker. And so,
Whatever they want.
yes. So this event, like what we've made, like a remote event, could actually be fired from any single script that you can imagine. So if a hacker has access to a remote event, he can fire that. And imagine if you have an event that like gives you money or something, or like insta-kill someone, right? That's just, yeah, that's not fair. Exactly, because a hacker can just call these events. So what you actually have to think about as a developer is you have to think about that security. You have to add like checks and like conditions. And it becomes really hard because like networking itself is difficult. So thinking about making it your own custom framework, especially like if I want to make my own combat system, like I have to think about every single edge case, you know? And it's pretty difficult, especially when you're starting off.
Make sure nobody gets unwanted access.
Exactly. So so that's why I like it. There's a lot, dude. The funny thing is, I watch these YouTube tutorials, and there are kids younger than me that like teach me. They're like 13 years old, and I'm like, what are you talking about, bro?
I mean, yeah, like